Hello students, welcome back to another live session. I had a bit of challenge setting up and I know that we have not been on here for a while, so I decided to let us come and explore a performance task, not really a performance task, but like a mini performance task. We're going to do some problem solving with fractions. So I want for you to go ahead and get your books and your pencils and be ready for some work. Also, guys, I want you to ensure that you tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. as I will be doing a performance task with you guys. I am also going to go ahead and share the link at the end of this so that you are able to connect and share the link with your classmates. All right, so I see a couple persons here. If you are on the live, please just tell us your name and the school that you're joining from, the school that you attend. Or just tell us your school. It doesn't really matter what you tell us. Just introduce yourself simply by just saying name or just say school you're from, so I know where you are tuning in with me from. Hi, Kaylee. All right, so I see Kay as well. All right, so I wanted to wait a little while for other persons to join in because I did not really advertise this, and so a lot of persons would not have known that we are going live. And that's the reason it is quite important for you to ensure that you have subscribed so that as soon as I go live, you'll be able to come on. All right, so let us dive in. So remember now, you can take screenshots because we might be, I don't want you to be spending time to be writing off the questions and so on. So you can just take screenshots so that you have the question to go back to if needs be. All right, so let us go to our first question. I hope you're ready. If you're ready with your pens and your books or paper, please type ready in the chat. Type ready in the chat if you're ready for us to move on to our first part of the question, first part of the task. Hi, Shanique. And remember, guys, go ahead and click that little button that says to share and share with your classmates. You can share with your classmates in your group so that they as well, they can come on and watch. So if you're ready for us to start, type ready in the chat because we don't want to take too much time on this afternoon. All right, so I see Kaylee saying that she's ready. And all right, so let's go. All right, so the first part of the question is this. It says that Fran loves fried dumplings, but could never get the recipe right. Her mother went to work and told her to use the recipe posted on the fridge. The recipe can make 6 fried dumplings. So let me see persons text in the chat if you like fried dumplings. Tell me if you like fried dumplings. I love fried dumplings. All right, so I'm looking to see those who like to eat fried dumplings. All right, so I'm not seeing anyone sharing that they like fried dumplings as yet. Okay, K. Paul says, yes, miss, but I'm not really sure what you're responding to. All right. All right. So Kaylee says she loves fried dumplings and she's going to eat some for dinner. Awesome. All right. I love fried dumplings as well. However, like Fran, I can never ever get the recipe right. So Fran asked her mother to leave the recipe for her. All right. So these are the ingredients for the recipe, and for the recipe that mom left has 3 cups of flour, 3/8 cups of flour rather, a quarter cup of baking powder, 1/12 cup of salt, and 1/3 cup of water. So the question being asked here is how much dry ingredient will be used to make the dough? So can you tell me what the dry ingredients are? Can you share with me what are considered to be dry ingredients? Let me hear you. Let me see you in the chat. What of with these 4 ingredients, which ones are considered to be dry ingredients? So like Kelly, who says that she loves fried dumplings, she should be able to tell us what are considered to be dry ingredients. All right. So Kay Powell says flour. And you're right. Flour is a dry ingredient. Any other dry ingredient? All right. So Kaylee says flour, baking powder, and salt. Definitely. So those are the 3 dry ingredients that are needed to make the fried dumplings. So your task is to determine or to calculate how much dry ingredient will be used to make the dough in all. Do you know what the dough is? Do you know what the dough is in this question? You know what dough means when you're talking about dumpling? What do you think dough means? Welcome for the persons who have just joined. You are not late. In fact, we're just going through the beginning of the task. What do we mean by dough when we're talking about fried dumpling or dumpling in general? What is the dough? All right, so I'm not seeing anyone responding as yet what the dough is, but I hope that you know what dough means. So the dough is whenever you're making dumplings, you have to combine the flour, the water, the baking powder, the salt, and mix those things together, knead them together in a dough. So that nice good dough, that mommy and daddy or grandma or whomever might need, or sometimes you might need, and you combined it with the water. When it is finished and you're ready to pick off and make your dumpling and put in the pot, that is what you would call the dough. All right. So the flour, the baking powder, the salt, and the water, they all are used to make the dough. All right. So now that it is asking how much dry ingredient will it take to make the dough, you are now able to go ahead and calculate that. But tell me, what operation would you need to do? I see K Paul say when you add water to the dry ingredients and you need it to form a dough. Awesome, K Paul. It look like you can make dumpling, man. And Kaylee says it's a thing we need to make the dumplings. All right. So go right ahead, guys, and go ahead and do your calculation. You can also share with us in the chat what operation or operations you might need to. Go right ahead, do your workout, and share your answer in the chat. All right, so I'm not seeing any response so far. How much dry ingredient will be used to make the dough? That is what we're working on. How do you think we need to find this out? I think we're going to need to add, subtract, multiply, divide. What do you think we need to do to figure this out? What operation must we use? Does anyone know? What do we need to do to figure this out? So I'm not really seeing any response so far. Not seeing any response as yet. Let me just go ahead and okay. So Kaylee says she think we need to add to figure out the answer. And Kay Powell is also in agreement. I agree too. I think we need to add because if we need to figure out how many or how much of the dry ingredient we're going to use in all, I think we really need to add those things as well. All right, so let me just go ahead in the meantime, make some space for us to do a workout. All right. All right, so let me hear from let me see if Kaylee or Kay has come up with their responses as yet. If it is that we're going to add, it simply means then that we need to add the dry ingredients that we have already identified. So we decided that yes, the flour will be a dry ingredient, and so we're going to write our 3/8. That represents the amount of flour we're going to use to make the 6 dumplings. And another dry ingredient is the baking powder, and we need a 1/4 cup of that. So we're going to have our 3/8 cup plus our 1/4 cup of baking powder. And we also have another dry ingredient, which is the salt. So that would mean we're going to also add 1/12 cup of salt. All right, so I am going to tell you not to try to use this recipe to make your fried dumplings because as I told you before, just like Fran, I'm never ever able to get that recipe right. So don't use my recipe here. You can go on Google and find some nice recipes, and maybe your mother or father they're good at making fried dumplings. So, you can go ahead, get the recipe from them, and don't be afraid. After class, you can share that recipe with me in the chat because this will be recorded and it will also be available for you to go and watch again after we're through with the live session. So I see where Kelly is saying that she thinks the answer is 5/8. So we have not worked it out yet, but what we're going to do now, we're going to explore and try to work it out to see if the answer is really 5/8. So there is something that you must notice about the fractions that we're adding. Sorry. What do you notice about these 3 fractions that we're about to add? What do you notice about those fractions? 3/8, a 1/4 or 1/4, and 1/12. So what do you notice about those 3 fractions? They all have different denominators. So T-Shani Sharp says they all have different denominators. Exactly. They all have different denominators. That means they are unlike fractions. And in order for us to add them, we must ensure that they have the same denominator. That means we're going to create equivalent fractions. Thank you. All right. We're going to, thank you, Kay. Yes, they have different denominators. That means then we need to create equivalent fractions for these so that we're able to add, you know, and see what fraction we have representing dry ingredients that we'll need to use to make the dough. So in order to make equivalent fractions, because I think you guys would have started your calculations already, we need to decide then if we're going to create equivalent fractions of these fractions here to ensure that all of them have the same denominator. We need to think about what could that same denominator be. Any idea? What do you think that denominator will be? If all of them are to have the same denominator, what will that denominator be? So in order to think about that same denominator, we need to look at all these denominators here and think of a common multiple that we could use to determine the denominator that we want our new fractions or equivalent fractions to be or to have. What do you think that common denominator will be? All right, so Tisha Nice says 48. And I believe 48 can be used. However, we also need to think about the lowest multiple, which is common to these three fractions. So 48 could be used, but can you give us a lower number, a smaller number that can be used instead of the 48? Because whenever we're trying to create equivalent fractions to add, the aim is to create the lowest or the smallest common multiple or denominator. All right, so 48 could be used, but there is definitely a number that is smaller that is it's best suited to use. Okay, so K Powell says 24. So K Powell says 24. Tisha Nye, all right. So Tisha Nye Sharp went back and she decided, yes, 24 can be used. And Kaylee is sharing the same thing as well. And I agree as well. 24 is a perfect number, perfect common multiple, because 4 can go into 24 without leaving a remainder. 8 can go into 24 without leaving a remainder, and 12 can go into 24 without leaving a remainder. Now, bear in mind that we could not use 12 here for that common denominator, because while 4 could go into 12 without leaving a remainder, 8 couldn't. So if 8, we get a group of 8 from 12, we'll have a remainder of 4. And that's the reason we really could not have chosen 12. So what we're going to do now, we're going to create equivalent fractions for 3/8. That has a denominator of 24. So 3/8 is the fraction we want to make an equivalent fraction for. And the denominator of our equivalent fraction must be 24. So in order to do this, we need what we need to do, because there's a quick way in working this out, which is what I'm going to teach you today. So if you don't already know, so we know that our denominator or new denominator will be 24. So what we need to do is we need to see how many equal groups of 8 we can get out of 24. So we're going to say 24 divided by 8, and that will give us, all right, Charlotte also says our denominator would be 24. Definitely. So 8 into 24 would be 3 times, and we multiply whatever we get, and in this case 3, by the numerator. So 8 into 24 goes 3 times. The 3 that we get, we multiply the numerator by it, and that gives us 9. And this means then that all right, thanks K. That means then that the equivalent fraction for 3/8 with a denominator of 24 would be 9/24. So I'm going to just write that right here. I want you to go ahead, use the same procedure, and you can work ahead and you can tell me what the equivalent fraction of quarter would be if the denominator is 24. And you can also do the same for 12, for 1/12. So we have 9/24 because we're just finding equivalent fraction, so we can easily add these. So for a quarter, what would the equivalent fraction be? Go ahead and work it out. So I'm just going to write my quarter here, my equal sign, because remember, equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value, even though they have different numbers in the numerator and different numbers in the denominator. So we first need to say 4 into 24, and that goes 6 times. We multiply that 6 by 1 to give us 6, and so a quarter is the same as 6/24. Thank you, Tishanai. Sharp. She went right ahead and worked it out before me. You are so correct. So a quarter can be represented as 6/24. What about 1/12? What about 1/12? What would that equivalent fraction be? I'm taking my time because I would love to see the response before I work it out here. All right, so I see Tisha Nye Sharp coming again, and she's saying 2/24. Let us check to see if that is definitely correct. So 12 into 24 goes 2 times, and remember, we're going to multiply that 2 by the numerator here, and 2 times 1 is 2. Therefore, the equivalent fraction for our 12s is definitely 2/24. Great job, Shania. So I'm going to put it here. And now you would notice that we have the same denominator. So we have like fractions, so we're able to go ahead and add these equal parts, or these number of 24ths that are identified. Now, we first need to ensure that we understand that 3/8 is equivalent to 9/24, and 1/4 is equivalent to 6/24. 1/12 equivalent to 2/24. We must ensure we understand that, and we see how we came up with those equivalent fractions. All right, and also remember to take your screenshots so that you have this to continue your workout with the next question, because all of these questions will be related. All right, so now that let me just change this color. So now that we have created equivalent fractions for these, we can go right ahead and determine how much dry ingredient will be used to make the dough. And I'm going to just put my equal sign here, and I'm going to wait for you guys to tell me how much dry ingredient will be needed to make the dough. So I'm going to wait a while, and I'm going to look for your answers in the chat. All right, so all right, Tisha Nye is very sharp, as her name says, and she has 17/24. I want to see if the others, if anyone else has that same answer as her. Okay, so Kaylee and Kay, they all have the same answer. Anyone else with the same answer? Or does anyone have a different answer? So in order to calculate how much dry ingredient, we need to add the number of 24. So we have 9/24 plus 6/24. That would be 17/24 plus 2/24. 9/24 plus 6/24 would be 15/24, and plus 2/24 would be 17/24. So you are definitely correct, guys. 17/24. So you can write your answer in a sentence. How much dry ingredient would be used to make the dough? 17/24 cup of dry ingredients will be used to make the dough. So you can go ahead and write your answer in a sentence in your book. All right, Charlotte also agrees that it's 17/24. Great job, guys. Go ahead, take a screenshot here. Ensure that you write the correct things in your book if you did not get the correct answer. And let us move on to our next question. Can we move on? Have you taken your screenshot? All right, so I'm going to clear screen and we're going to move on to the next question. All right. So here we go. So it says now, it continues the same thing basically, but now it asks how much flour more than baking powder will be used. What do you think we're going to do here to figure this out? If it asks how much flour more than baking powder will we need to use, what operation do you think we'll be using? While you think about that, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to make some space here so that we have space to work out our question. What operation? If we want to figure out how much flour more than baking powder we'll be using, definitely Kaylee, we will be subtracting. Great. So can you go ahead and do your subtraction, guys, and share your answers here in the chat? Take a minute or two. Go ahead, do your workout, and share your answer with us here in the chat. I'm definitely going to work it on the board so that you can confirm or you can check to see if your answers are correct. But if they're not correct, you can also make your correction. Now, this should not take you a long time because remember, we have started with what we need to do here. So if you say we need to subtract, let me just start annotating and start to write. All right, so Tisha Nash Sharp says 1/8 more flour would be used. So more flour than baking powder. You want to ensure that your sentence is precise because it's comparing flour and baking powder. Kaylee says 2/8. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to work this out. So we know we're going to subtract baking powder from flour because it says how much more flour than baking powder. That simply means that flour is more than baking powder. So we're going to take out the baking powder from the flour. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to write our 3/8 here, subtracted by baking powder is 1/4. So in order to do this, remember now, we cannot operate on the fractions like this. We can't add nor subtract fractions if their denominators are not the same. And so we have to go ahead and create equivalent fractions for these, but we need to figure out what common denominator both of them will have. What will the common denominator be? What will the common denominator be, guys? All right. So Kaylee and Kaylee says 12 and Kay says 24. Remember, we said that it cannot be 12 because if we are to divide 8 into 12, we will get a remainder. Tisha Nye Sharp says it would be 8. Now, of course, we Nye Sharp says it would be. Remember, before we created equivalent fraction for 3/8 and we got 9/24. Let me confirm, right? And for 1/4, we got 6/24. So we could actually use those to begin with, or we could find a new LCM, a new lowest common denominator, lowest common multiple for their denominator. So we can definitely use 8 and we can definitely use 24 because we have already created equivalent fractions for these. So the equivalent fraction that we created for 3/8 was 9/24, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not sure I remember fully, but this looks about right. And for a quarter, we said it would have been 6/24. So if we have this, it means then that we're going to subtract 6/24 from 9/24, which will give us a difference of 3/24. And if you look at 3/24, you would notice that we can simplify, right? Yes, we can simplify because you would not realize that there is a number we can divide our numerator by, and we can also divide our denominator by that same number without leaving a remainder. So we can simplify or reduce the fraction into its simplest term. What number do you think we can use to simplify this fraction? All right, I see you guys making your corrections, and we'll definitely know which one of these answers are correct as soon as we have worked this out. So what number do you think we will need to use to simplify this fraction 3/24? Yes, we can try 3. So we're going to try 3. So we're going to say 3 into itself goes 1 time, and 3 into 24 goes 8 times. And so it means then that 3/24 is also the same as 1/8. 1 as the numerator and 8 as the denominator. So this would be the answer to say we have 1/8 cup more flour, 1/8 more flour than baking powder will be used. Now I want to go ahead and I want us to also work it out if we were using 8, starting out with 8 as our denominator. So we have 3/8 and we're going to subtract a quarter from it. So we first need to see what fraction, if 8 will be our denominator, what would be the equivalent fraction for 3/8? Now, since 3/8 already have 8 as its denominator, we just need to leave it as is. So we're going to write back our 3/8. And for 1/4, we know that we want, for 1/4, we know that we need to get 8 as our denominator. So we'll just say 4 into 8 goes 2 times and multiply that 2 by the 1, and we get 2. And so the equivalent fraction for 1/4 will be 2/8. And if you simplify this, it comes right back to 1/4 because it's the same thing. So if we already have this, so it will be 3/8 subtracted by 2/8. Here we would just be taking away the 2/8 from 3/8, which means we're going to have 1/8 left. And so we have 1/8 more flour than baking powder. So both ways can be used. It depends on your understanding. And I'm not going to tell you to use the one that we have been doing before or this other one here where we just go right ahead and create new equivalent fractions. Whichever way you're comfortable with, go with that way. All right, so our answer would be we have 1/8 more flour than baking powder. So 1/8 cup more flour, cup of flour more than baking powder. So go ahead and you write your answer in a sentence as well. Take a screenshot of this and let us move on quickly to our next question. So the correct answer for this one would be 1/8. Yes, you were. Don't worry, because after a while, this would be a piece of cake to you. And I know that even though we're on summer break, remember our performance task, we'll be doing that in next term. That means September term, when you go back to school, one of those months, you will be doing your performance tasks. So, you have to keep on practicing with the different concepts that are normally in performance tasks. In performance tasks, most times they have fractions coming out. Most times they have area or perimeter or both. And a lot of times too, we get some dollars and cents where we need to compare prices from different places and make a decision. And never you forget that in performance task, you need to also justify your answer. All right. So let us move on to the next question. Great job so far, guys. All right. So here we have our third question. So it says, Fran looked in the kitchen cupboard and saw some flour and baking powder. Upon measuring the flour, she got 4 cups of flour. She measured the baking powder and she got 2 cups. So in Fran's cupboard, she has 4 cups of flour when she measure it out and 2 cups of baking powder. So with that information now, it says that Fran decides to use the recipe to make 1 dozen dumplings for herself and some cousins that came to visit. So some cousin come over to visit her, and she now, instead of making that 6 dumpling that she would have been making before, she decided to make 1 dozen instead. But remember that recipe, this recipe right here that mother left on the fridge, right here with 5/8 cup of flour, quarter cup of baking powder, 1/12 cup of salt, and a third cup of water. Remember that this recipe can only make 6 dumplings. Remember, it can only make 6 dumplings. But now she need to make dumplings for she need to make 1 dozen dumplings now for herself and the cousins. So if it is that the recipe can make 6, but now she need to make 1 dozen, what do you think she would need to do so that she can get the recipe, that same recipe to make the same to make dumplings, to make the 1 dozen dumplings? What would she need to do with the original recipe? What does she need to do to the original recipe? All right. So Tisha Nice Sharp says she would need to double it. That means she need to use the same ingredients. She need to use 2 times the ingredients that are needed to make the 6 dumplings. Awesome job. She needs to use more charnet, but how much more? She needs to use twice the amount that she would have been using for that 6 dumplings. So yes, the nice term that we can use is that she needs to double the recipe. All right, so if she's doubling the recipe, we need to see then if the 4 cups of flour that you have in the cupboard, if that is enough, and we need to see if the 2 cups of baking powder are enough. But here it says then how much flour will be left. So we know how much flour she has. She has 4 cups of flour, and we now need to know to decide how much flour will be needed. Yes, guys, she needs to add more, twice the amount. Great. So how much flour here would she need then? If she's gonna double the recipe, how much flour will she need? Go ahead and work that out. How much cup of flour will she need if she needs to double the recipe? All right, so you're taking your time. I know you're taking your time and working this out. So just show it me in the chat, show it all of us in fact, how much cup of flour or how much flour will she need to make that 1 dozen dumpling? And after you have calculated that, I want you to now tell me how much flour will be left when she has done that. All right, so Simone Stevens says 6 cups of flour, but remember, it says 6 cups of flour. I want to know though how you calculated your 6 cups of flour. All right. So if she's gonna double the flour recipe, that means if she's gonna double the flour recipe, it's either she's gonna multiply 5/8 by 2, or she's gonna add 5/8 to itself. So she's gonna add 5/8 twice, right? Right, guys? So if she's doubling the recipe, that's exactly what she would need to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to work out where I am going to attempt to double the recipe. Let me get a different color to write with. All right, so I'm seeing a response from only Simone Stevens. All right, so Tisha Nice Sharp says 1 2/8 flour would be needed. Let's go ahead and see which one of these are correct, or if any of them are correct at all. I know you guys are smart people. So we know that if we're doubling the recipe, it means that we're going to use 5/8 cup and the 5/8 cup more. So we're doubling the recipe. So we're going to have 5/8 plus 5/8. I thought I changed this color to red. All right. So far you'd realize that they are like fractions because the denominators are the same. And so we just need to go ahead and add how many 8. So we have 5/8 plus 5/8, and that would give us 10/8. So I'm going to put our 10 here, 10/8 here. Now, all right, so okay, so Kaylee says 6 cups of flour would be left. But remember, in a Kaylee, she only have 4 cups. So how is it she going to have more cups left when she use out some? Think about it. All right, so yes, we have 10/8 right here. 10/8, but 10/8 is an improper fraction, and so we need to convert this to a mixed number. So in order to do that, we say 8 divided in 8 into 10, give us 1 whole cup, and 2 is left. So that means 1 whole cup and 2/8 of another cup. That is what she would need, Fran will need to make the 1 dozen dumpling. 1 and 2/8. So of course 10/8 is correct as well, but we don't want to leave our answer in an improper fraction like that. It's best to leave it as a proper fraction if we can, or as a mixed number if it is already if it's in an improper fraction. All right, so hi Trey, you. All right, so our response here, so our answer here would be 1 and 2/8 flour is what she need to use to make the 1 dozen fried dumplings. But since she has 4 cups of flour, can you tell me how much flour would be left here? How would she need to figure that out? So we know that we have 4 cups of flour. All right, Kate. So she has 4 cups of flour. Go ahead and calculate how much flour will be left. All right, so Tisha Nice Sharp shares that there will be 2 6/8 cup of flour. Oh, will be needed. Okay, so right now we're calculating, Tisha and I, we're calculating how much flour will be left. So you're saying that would be needed. Remember, you had shared that 1 and 2/8 is already needed. So you're now to calculate how much flour will be left. I suppose you made a mistake in writing that, right? You can go ahead and make your corrections. And I'm still awaiting responses from the others. All right. So in the meantime, while others go ahead and type their answers in the chat, we know that she has 4 whole cups of flour. And from that, remember, we know that she's going to need 1 and 2/8 cup. So if we need to now say 4 subtracted by 1 and 2/8. Now, right here, this is telling you that we need to take away this 1 whole cup from 4 cups, and that would give us 3 cups left. But we need to take 2/8 now from one of those other cups. So that means from the 3 cups, we need to take out another whole cup. So we can take out 2/8, and that would mean then that we have 2 whole cup left. So we have 2 whole cup left. I'm going to write it here because we take away this 1 whole cup and we take away 1 other cup, so we can take out 2/8 from it. So that 1 other whole cup that we take out, we can represent it as 8/8. 8/8, because 1 whole is divided into 8 equal parts. So if we have 8/8 representing one of the wholes, we can then subtract 2/8 from the 8/8. So 2/8 from 8/8 would be 6/8. And remember, we have this 2 whole here, so that we didn't touch any at all. So our response would be 2 and 6/8 cups. Now, 2 and 6/8 cups, I'm seeing where, okay, so Tisha then made her correction and she said 2 and 6/8 cup will be left. But can we simplify this answer? Can we simplify 2 and 6/8? If we simplify 2 and 6/8, what would we have? Let us simplify 2 and 6/8. All right, so I'm seeing where Tisha and I is saying 2 and 3/4. So let's go right ahead and do that. So in order to do that, we need to find a number that when we divide it into 6, it leaves no remainder. And that same number, when divided into 8, it leaves no remainder. And that number could be 2, right? Because 2 is an even number and 6 and 8 are even numbers. So not necessarily because 2 is an even number, because 6 and 8 are even numbers and all even numbers are divisible by 2. So we're going to say 2 into 6 goes 3 times and 2 into 8 goes 4 times. All right, so we're left with 2 and 3/4. Great job, guys. And we are going on to our final question for tonight. So go ahead and ensure that you have taken a screenshot of these But if not, you can always go back to this video and watch this over again. And don't forget again to share this video. At the end of this, you can go back on my channel and share the video with your classmates. So you can share it in your WhatsApp groups or share it on, if you have, wherever you can share it with your friends. All right. Or if even in emails and so on. So I'm going to clear screen here and we move on. Yes, so 2 and 3/4 is correct. Nothing is wrong if you have 2 and 6/8. That is also correct. But you always want to leave your answers in the simplest form. All right, great job. So let us move on to our final question, and I'm going to allow you to do it on your own. Now it says that we already know that Fran looked in our kitchen cupboard and she found 4 cups of flour and 2 cups of baking powder. And since she's now going to make 1 dozen dumplings for herself and her cousins that came to visit, I want you to go ahead and calculate and tell me how much baking powder will be left. How much baking powder will be left? So I'm just going to pause here, allow you to go ahead and work this out, share your answer in the chat as well as a little explanation. How did you come up with that answer? All right, guys, so I'm going to allow you, I'll give you 3 minutes or so to explore this last task and share your answer in the chat. So you can go ahead and share your answers first and then your response, your explanation after. All right, so we have an answer. We have Tisha Sharp says 1.5. All right, so I've seen your answer, Tisha, but I'm kind of waiting for a little explanation. How did you go about working this out, Tisha, and why did you do it the way you did? All right. So in the meantime, because I think Tisha and I is taking a while to type, I'm just going to go right ahead and we're going to start working this out. All right. So let me just go ahead and make some space here. So all right, so now we have some space. All right, K Powell says 1 1/4. So we at least have two different answers. So we can go right ahead and start working this out. Now remember that in order to figure out how much baking powder will be left, we have to figure out how much baking powder will be used, right? So if it is that we're doubling the recipe, it means then that we need to find, if we double the recipe, we need to find the amount of baking powder that will be used. So if we're doubling, it means we're going to add 1/4 to 1/4. And that will give us 2/4. So because 1/4 here and 1/4 here is equal to 2/4 or 2/4. That will tell us how much baking powder was used. But 2/4 can be simplified. And so we're going to go right ahead and simplify the 2/4. So we can simplify it by finding which number we can use to divide into the numerator without leaving a remainder, as well as the denominator without leaving a remainder. And since the numerator and denominator are even numbers, we're just going to go right ahead and try 2. So 2 into 2 goes 1 time, and the 2 into 4 goes 2 times. Therefore, 2/4 is the same as a half. Now we know then that Fran will be using 1/2 cup of baking powder to make this recipe, and she has 2 cups. So we need to go ahead and take out that 1/2 cup from the 2 whole cups that she has. So 2 subtracted by 1/2 would be equal to what? So we can get 1/2 of 1 cup. So from the 2 whole cup, we're going to, take away 1/2 from one of the 2 cups. So 1/2 from one of the 2 cups will be left with 1/2. And remember that we'd have 1 other cup left that we did not trouble. So we say 2, we take out 1 cup, leaving 1 whole cup. And that 1 cup that we take out, we're going to subtract 1/2 from it. So the 1 cup that we have taken out would be represented as 2 halves, because a whole can be represented as 2 halves. And from that, we're going to subtract 1/2, which will give us 1 whole cup. And 1/2 from 2 halves will be left with 1/2. And so we will have 1.5 cup of baking powder left. Let me see what Tisha has here. So she said that she got the answer by adding 1/4 to 1/4. Definitely that's what we are doing here. Great job. And then she got 2/4, and she reduced it and got 1/2. And then she turned the 2 cups of baking powder that Fran found into a mixed fraction, which is 1 and 2 halves. And then she got her answer, which she gave before, which is 1.5. Great job, guys. Great job. I realized that we have some persons who are just joining. But this video here will be available to you after we have ended. And don't forget to join me tomorrow at 11 a.m. as we explore a performance task. Tell your friends about it so that they don't miss out, because we still have to practice for the performance task. So we have 1.5 cup of baking powder left. I'm going to clear drawings and move on to our final slide, which is where I am just sharing with you guys that we have this session tomorrow that you're going to join me on YouTube at 11 a.m. So right here, we're gonna have a live math lesson where you'll be able to text back to me. Right. So your denominator would be, all right. Okay. So I had something else here. The denominator is 2, right? Oh, you're correcting what you have. Okay, I understand. All right. So your denominator should have been 2. Great. Awesome. All right. So join me tomorrow, guys, at 11 a.m. Same place here on YouTube as we explore a performance task because we're still practicing we're still getting ourselves ready for that performance task because at the end of the day, we want to do well in our national exams so that we can excel and be placed in the high school of our choice. So thank you guys for joining me this evening. I'll see you tomorrow at 11. Bye bye.